Hello everybody, welcome.
Yeah, feel free to put your cameras on so we can see you.
Nice to see everybody.
There's Fergus, hi.
Hi Fergus.
Hi Celine, hi Jago. So I'm still in the office.
Hi, Paul.
I've got another call
Listening in the background.
So yeah, I'll be here for as long as I can be. But
That's
yeah,
great. Thanks for joining us. Great.
No worries.
Oh, I see Rika, isn't it?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, let me just start my video. Hang on.
Isn't it 3 o'clock in the morning, Rika?
Nearly 11:30.
Wow.
Not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, nice to see you all.
How are you?
Excellent. Hello everyone, it's nice to see some faces.
We're going to get started because we said we'd start at 4:30 UK time. We did have more people registering, but we'll let them in as they come. But if we get started on time, and then as always, we're recording and we'll send a copy of this recording out to those people who couldn't make it and registered, but it'll also go out to our members, and we have almost 800 members who will receive a copy of this, so a decent reach. So I'm sure they're all looking forward to receiving it and watching what's hopefully going to be a really interesting discussion. So thank you everybody. I'll hand over to Jago because he's running this session.
Thanks Leanne. Right, great. So hi everyone, thanks for joining us, it's really appreciated. And so I want to have just a quick just to quickly introduce what we're doing here. This is part of the Men for Equality series, which is a series started by Lead 50/50, just to get more men into the discussion alongside women, just to talk about some of the issues around gender equality. So today's discussion, we're going to take on sustainable leadership, and I was thinking of a way to introduce it. And I'm reading this book. I don't know if anyone has read it yet. It came out last year, Why Men Win at Work, by Jill Whitty-Collins. It's very interesting. It takes you through a lot of interesting scenarios, and the chapter I started last night just made a lot of sense to me. It's about competence versus confidence, and basically she takes us through lots of reasons why there are differences biologically between men and women, their intentions and how we present and work ourselves. And so very often women will underestimate and men will overestimate in general, and women will have a different attitude to risk, and so that comes over as confidence. And so in leadership positions, the confidence that men seem to have takes over. So it seemed like a good way to introduce the concept of, do we need to change leadership models to be more sustainable, to encourage diversity and sustainability in environments and the whole group of things. So that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to have a keynote speech from Penny Ferguson. Now Penny is the CEO of the Living Leader, and Living Leader is a course which she devised after I think by your own admission, Penny, you got to the age of 50 and the life hadn't gone the way you would have liked it to go in many ways. And so you read a lot of books, did a lot of things, and found out that there was a different way to view leadership. And so you've spent the last 27 years, I would say, is it 45,000 people been through your course?
Over 65,000.
65,000. And so I did the course last year, and it resonated with me why I understood a lot about why I maybe hadn't fitted in some of the leadership environments I'd been in, because her take is so very different and I think very apt for the concept of sustainable leadership. And it changed a lot of aspects of my life. So I was really excited to get Penny to come and do a keynote. So Penny's going to do a keynote and tell us what leadership actually is. And then she's going to leave us, and then we're going to have a conversation between the four of us. So Penny, I will hand over to you if you're happy with that. Tell us what leadership really is.
Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate it, Jago. I just would like to say that this is my perception of leadership, okay? Everybody will have different perceptions always. So if I can just go back to at the age of 50, and Jaga's absolutely right, my life changed at that point. And at that point, my life was in a really bad space. I'd just come out of my third marriage. I'd lost all the money that I brought to all marriages, and I'm talking about a huge amount. I was now in debt. Tragically, my second son had gone schizophrenic at 18, had just died at the age of 26. So I think you'd say that my life was in pretty good free fall, and I'd lost all my confidence. I was a pretty good mess. But on top of that, my last husband was a leadership and management trainer. And one of the things that I couldn't get my head around was people used to leave his program saying, amazing, best program I've ever been on, incredible. And I'd go meet the clients probably 3-6 months later. And what I couldn't get my head around was that they'd forgotten at best 80% of it within 6 weeks. By and large, behavior change was almost nothing. And this didn't sit with my values. I was really uncomfortable. I thought, how come people can go on these programs and say it's amazing, but virtually no behavior change, and companies are paying money for this. So I was really disillusioned. There wasn't too much going awfully well at that time. But I still had this passion for saying, I really want to help people. And I began to discover first things I didn't want. And one of the things that helped me become clear was I qualified as a hypnotherapist. And of course, somebody might come to see me who'd got, I don't know, a phobia about dogs or a phobia about flying. And you can take them through what I seem to remember was called a swish technique. And they'd leave and they'd go and become an air hostess or start running a dog kennel, you know, and all great that you could do that. But I thought, I don't want to do this. I'm doing it for them. That's for me what I'm not interested in. I want to help people step into their own potential, not go to somebody to say, can you sort me out? And so I thought, I want to see if I can find a different way. And I can still remember to this day when I put together the program, and I'd love to tell you I'm brilliant at program design, but it wouldn't be true. I just had this feeling about what I wanted to do and how could I make it work, but in a way where it was sustainable, that people actually would leave the program. I didn't care if they said it was great or what, but real behavior change that became sustainable. And I still remember running this in my little dining room. And I had a very odd group of 6 people, ranging from a managing director through to a housewife going through a crisis. At the end of the first 2 days, somebody who was head of all development training for Sun Microsystems in the UK said, Penny, that 2 days has just changed my life. And I hadn't got the faintest idea why, not a clue. But I suddenly found I've got Sun Microsystems as a client, and I was delivering a program, having no clue why it was working. But what I did realize was I believed I'd understood leadership, and I didn't. I absolutely didn't. And delivering that program over a year is what helped me become aware of leadership. And I believed that leadership was for the workplace. And the more I got into it, I thought, no, it's not. This is for every single part of your life. And really understanding leadership has changed my life, no question. And there's nobody alive who would not benefit from understanding leadership and beginning to realize that actually leadership is really simple. It's really simple. Now, what I suppose the biggest wake-up call for me as well was beginning to recognize I'd never understood the difference between leadership and management. Let me just tell you some of the things that this is the definitions we'd give. Recognize they're always going to change, but they ain't going to change for us. This is what works for us. To start with, about leadership, recognize the minute you influence another human being you're leading. But what for me is the mark of outstanding leadership is not just how good a leader you are, it's how many leaders you develop. You can be amazing as a leader. You can be inspirational. You can come up with all the incredible ideas. But if you haven't developed other people, what the heck do you do if suddenly you're off sick for 3 months? Oh dear, where's boss today? I don't quite know what I'm to do today. And what's your most important leadership role? That as a parent. Isn't part of your role helping your children develop so they can think for themselves, take 100% responsibility for how they choose to react in each and every moment, and be able to step into their full potential. Isn't that the most incredible leadership role of all? And then I began to say, okay, I adore my children. And by the time I was 50, of course, all mine were grown up. I had 6 children before I was 30. So they were now basically grown up, all of them. And I looked at it and I began to realize for the first time and really understand the difference between management and leadership. This is our definition. Outstanding managers drive people to perform at the highest level they're capable of. It's very much about control. Outstanding leaders inspire them to do it for themselves, and it's more about freedom. And that's what scared the heck out of me, because I realized I had been managing my children all the time. So what is it that will define that whether we're managing or leading? Nearly always, and probably the biggest thing, is how we communicate. I love my children. Now, all of you have probably been through really tough times in the last 18 months. Really, really tough. Through circumstances that you wish to God you'd never had to experience. And in some companies, you've had to make some very tough decisions, maybe lose some people, maybe you've lost jobs, maybe there's all sorts of things that have gone really badly wrong. And in those circumstances, you have to almost behave as managers. You have to make decisions. You have to say, this is what we're going to do. We'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do something. You have no choice, and that's entirely appropriate. And that's what we're going to do. But to go into leadership, you need to go into how. And because I love my children so much, I was always telling them not just what to do, but how to do it. They'd come to me for advice. Yeah, this is what you do. I've got the answers. I've been there. I've done it. All of this stuff, I could never stop giving them advice. Well, I wouldn't go that way if I were you, because that's where there's going to be problems. Because I cared, I could not stop giving them advice. What I was actually doing was saying, you're never going to be able to think for yourself without me. You're never going to be better than I was yesterday, because it's always coming out of my head and my advice. And guess what? I'm telling you that I'm disempowering you totally. And that's what happens with giving advice. And that's management. To become a communicator as a leader, your communication needs to change dramatically. It needs to be going into asking questions. You do not influence people by continually giving them your opinion. What you do is see if you can get them to think for themselves. To do that, you need to ask questions. So somebody comes to you for advice and you might say, hey, that's a really good question, but tell me, what's the first thing you'd do if I wasn't here? So your children come along and they come up with a really, Mum, what do I do about this? Mum, what would I do? Well, tell me, what's the first step that you think you might take? Well, if you knew that there are 3 possible solutions to this, what do you think those 3 solutions might be? You find questions. What you're doing is helping them think for themselves. That is what leaders do. And when you do that, you're helping the person grow, develop, step into more of their potential. That's when leadership becomes sustainable. What you're also doing, and this is what I don't think I realized the importance of at all, is responsibility is key. And the biggest gift you can give anybody is helping them take responsibility for their own lives. The way you do that is not by giving them your opinions or telling them what to do. It's asking questions. And it's not just necessarily about asking questions from other people. It's about asking yourself. So when there's things that you're thinking, I don't know how to do this, hang on a minute, what am I assuming here? What is it that's going on in my head? What am I assuming is stopping me? What am I assuming that's making it so difficult? So if now you're having to do things in a really different way, ask yourself that question. And I'm not talking about this from, if you like, just this is what I think you need to do. When COVID first hit, our business went from having built up a business over the last 28 years to be a really successful business. We went into free fall. All of my speaking engagements were cancelled. All training stopped. All the companies that were buying licenses to roll it out, they couldn't train anyway. Everything stopped dead. I had a choice. Do I stop? Do I give up? Do I wind the company up? Or do I something different? And luckily, my younger daughter, who's also my co-director, kept asking me questions, because she was saying, Mum, can't you redesign it, do it virtually, so that we've got a second offering now? And I kept backing away from it. And she said, Mum, what are you assuming? Oh, I'm assuming I'm going to find it too difficult. I'm assuming I'm going to have to talk to a bloody telephone and film the whole program. And all this stuff came out. Mum, if you knew this could be a huge success and talking to a telephone is still something you could do, how would you go about it? So she kept coming back with the questions that helped me moving forward. And that's what we did. And we came through it. And my passion for leadership is just as big as it ever was. And I also knew it was more important than it's ever been. The other thing that's two things I've touched on that I think are the fundamentals of leadership: communication and understanding responsibility at a really different level. The other one is how you choose to think. And this again is an interesting one, but one of the things it's really easy to do when you go through difficult times, really easy to do, is focus on what's going wrong, on focus on what's not working, on focusing where things are really a nightmare. And if that's where you put your attention, guess what you're going to get more of? Because that's where your thinking is. That's where you are in reality. So it's choosing how you think. Am I going to look upon this? And that's why I was lucky in that Emma did keep coming back to me and asking me questions. Mum, if you knew there's a real opportunity to do something different here, how would you feel about it? She'd come back with questions all the time. So I was lucky I had that as support. But to come through this and come through it well, no matter how difficult the circumstances are, begin to say, okay, so that shit, I know that shit. Is it inside my control? No, it's outside of it. If it's outside of my control, I can't do anything about it. So start asking yourself questions. If I knew that I can find an opportunity here, what might that opportunity be? If I knew that I choose my thoughts and nobody else does, what might I choose to think about that's positive and will help me move forward today? Where you put your thinking is a hugely important thing. And it's one of the things I've seen in the workplace. A lot of the time, let's say that you've got 10 employees and you've got 2 that are somewhat underperforming. I can almost guarantee I know what you're going to be putting their attention on, what they're doing badly. When they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, they'll know they're doing badly. They won't feel good about it. So are you helping them think better, or are you helping them focus on things you don't want? It's not the most powerful modifier of behavior. If you really want to modify behavior, look for something they do well, however little it is. Look for what they're doing well and tell them that you're noticing. Let's say, let me give you a silly example. Let's say you've got a boss who's really lousy at listening and it drives you demented. And you go in to tell them something and they interrupt and they start, and you say, boss, you're not listening to me. What you're putting their attention on is a behavior you don't want. What's more useful is you might be cursing as you walk out the door, but wait until you find by accident they listen to you. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It could be they've had a heavy night the night before and they're still feeling half asleep. Doesn't matter what the reason is. They're listening to you. That's what you leap on. And you say, boss, I just want to say thank you. Your listening to me there enabled me to think more clearly. You got higher quality ideas from me and I really valued it. I just want to say thank you. How does that boss now feel? Oh, that was quite nice. Well, I wonder if I could do that again. What you're doing is putting your attention on a behavior you want. So that's just giving you an example. I'm doing this in, God, I'm taking too long. Doing this in this time, I need to wind up, guys. That's 3 things, okay? How you choose to think, responsibility, and communication. So that's all I've got time to give you today. But what I will say to you is if you can acquire a passion for leadership, A, it will become sustainable, and B, it will change your life and you will leave a legacy unlike anything that you can even begin to imagine. So thank you. And I'm sorry, Jake, I've taken much too long.
Not at all. Thanks, Penny. Yes, I do appreciate that when I asked you, you said, well, I can't fit it all into 10, 15 minutes. And because obviously some of the depth you go into is fantastic on the course. So, but yeah, I think listening to you again, just the power of the question keeps coming over to me, how it, can change organizations and families and everything is really important. So yes, I really appreciate it, and I think we're going to be able to build nicely on that. So thank you very much for joining us. I know you've got to leave us, and really appreciate it, and yeah, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Penny.
Love to see you all.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Right.
She's good.
So sorry, I've just got a slight technical issue. So yes, so I really appreciate Penny coming to do that, and I say, from my personal opinion, one of the things I credit her with that course, with changing my outlook on many things, and it is one of the reasons I've been doing this process with you. It's one of the reasons I'm doing Men for Equality, because she changed my view of leadership and what it really meant to me, and what I should be doing, and how I approach my life. And so it helped me to step up and get involved in this process. So that leads us on to the rest of our panel. So what I think I'll do is quickly introduce you, and then if you just quickly introduce yourselves, just with a couple of key points, that would be fantastic. So we've got Leanne Lineker, who's owner of Lila, co-founder of Lead 50/50, obviously, and chair of Alto. Jonathan Dykes, who has been leading international businesses for a number of years, and is now president of Green Standard Schools. And Celine Aloe, who is MD of UKLC, and so she runs the business that I work in, and so one of the things we wanted to touch on was how we've changed the leadership in our business. So Leanne, do you want to start? Introduce yourself and ask, I think, the first question of how Lead 50/50 are approaching this whole concept of changing the leadership model and into a more sustainable environment.
Yeah, thanks, Jago, for kicking this off. Thanks everybody for attending, and those people that are watching. So as Jago said, I co-founded an English language school and sixth form college in Liverpool in the northwest of England 17 years ago, and I run the business with my sister. And we've led the business, coached, mentored, managed people, done all the jobs ourselves over the years, and I can see lots of different things that we've done right in developing leaders, and things that we haven't got right over the years, and we've learned as we've gone. And then about 6 years ago, I think, Ella, we co-founded Lead 50/50, which started off as something that we thought would be a networking group for women to get together at international education events and support each other and just help each other with advice and a bit of moral support, really. But it evolved into so much more, and it's even evolving outside the international education industry now. We just had our 5th awards, and we had winners from financial services, we had someone from tech, as a legal firm, and so many more nominees as well from all over the world and lots of different sectors. So as well as the networking and the supporting each other, we do a lot of professional development and just bringing discussions like this to the fore and getting people's opinions and feedback on what they think would help balance gender equality in businesses and organisations, but create good leaders. And that's where we started to change our angle, really, to be less about just supporting women and more about making sure that the men that were going through the organisations and becoming leaders in their businesses we're all singing from the same song sheet, essentially. So we're all working on the same premises and recognise what we think makes a good leader. And speaking to Jago, probably almost a year ago now, or maybe like 9 months ago, we decided we really needed to make an active push to get more men involved, because we had men supporting the initiative in terms of getting involved from the top of the businesses, but not so many people turning up to events like this online or in person and getting involved in the actual conversations. It was still very female heavy. So it's absolutely brilliant to see so many men on the call today. I think it's the highest turnout we've had in ratio, which is interesting and encouraging as well, because it means that we're doing the right thing. But from when we started working on and thinking about what we wanted to develop and how we wanted to develop as leaders, we started looking at the word lead, and we realized that it represented some qualities that we admired and we think is important in leadership. And the L for lead represents longevity, which to me links to the sustainability. So you can look at leadership in terms of creating a company that's sustainable on the environment and the impact it has on the planet. But I think creating leaders and being a leader that's in it for the long haul, and your career has got longevity, that you're not going to burn out at 50, and you're not epitomizing that kind of old school leadership model where people get to 50 and start having heart attacks and strokes because they're on 15 hours a day, working around the clock, don't take time off on holidays. That's not, for me, sustainable. And the more we talk about it to other people, they don't find it sustainable. And I don't think you can sort of hand on heart encourage leaders in your business when it's not a healthy, sustainable model of leadership. And I think as a mother and a partner and a business owner, that longevity and sustainability is a really important part of what we do at Lead 50/50 and at Lila. And I don't want to model to my children or to my more junior members of staff that you've got to burn out in order to succeed. I don't think it's necessarily the way. I think you can achieve both. But we won't achieve that without reassessing what we're doing and modeling the right behaviours as leaders.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks, Jan. So, Jonathan, I'm going to come to you next. Obviously, I'm coming to you all from Glasgow. So I am at the heart at the moment of the future of the planet, apparently, with COP26 going on. Jonathan, I was going to ask you, so sustainable leadership needs to and should account for all of the, for future generations, therefore environment is really important. What are you seeing in terms of the people that are working with you in Green Standard schools in the way leadership is working towards those goals?
Yeah, okay. Well, perhaps I could just start by saying that my view of leadership is perhaps that it is taking a slightly different perspective to management, which is a theme that Penny touched on. Although, of course, for many of us, the two roles overlap. As we all know, the language teaching industry, bar a few exceptions, is fairly fragmented, and most of the businesses that operate are fairly small and therefore have relatively small teams. And so often it's one or two people who are having to perform the roles as senior manager and leader and everything else. But I think, as I say, if you think about the perspective, I think management is probably more to do with the here and now. In other words, what's going on in your business, this week, next week, maybe next month, maybe even next year, but perhaps doesn't go very far into the future. And I would distinguish that from leadership, which perhaps takes a broader perspective, both in terms of the timeline. In other words, you are thinking rather more seriously about the future in a longer term perspective. And also perhaps in a wider geographical perspective. In other words, you're not just thinking about, what's happening in your business, but you're thinking perhaps of the implications that your business may have on the society, or societies, plural. So, I've been thinking about how we could incorporate environmental sustainability into our industry for the best part of 15 years or so. And I went down the road of becoming registered, or getting one of our schools registered on the European Union's Eco-Management and Audit Scheme, which was a very interesting process, although perhaps not ideally suited for the sort of business we're in. So then, I cut a long story short, a couple of years ago, I thought it's high time that someone did something rather more systematic to try and push our industry into a more environmentally sustainable future. Now, as we all know, most of the people who are working in language teaching are fairly decent people. There are a few exceptions, but most of them are fairly decent, and therefore already take environmental issues seriously. And a number of schools are doing all sorts of interesting things. But no one had actually established a standard to work to. And that's what I thought that I might be able to achieve working with colleagues. And that's the task I set myself a couple of years back. And well, to cut a long story short, we launched this new association in just over a year ago now. And the whole idea is to try and push people into thinking about how they can make their businesses become more environmentally sustainable, not just now, but for the long term. And yeah, we've set the standard quite high. So just to give you an idea, approximately 2/3 of the language schools that have actually put in an application to become a member of our association haven't made the grade at their first attempt. But that's okay, because then what we do is provide feedback on their application, telling them that they've done well in various areas, but they perhaps need to up their game in other areas. And then they should go away. Ideally, they go away, make some changes, and then reapply a few months later when they can demonstrate that they have introduced these changes. So the whole idea is to try and push our industry forward in terms of becoming more environmentally sustainability. And I'm very pleased to say that the reaction has been very positive. I think everyone recognizes that there is the need to have an accreditation system of this description. And yeah, I mean, it's been tough getting people to think along these lines during COVID, obviously, because everyone was, trying to survive, and the idea of taking on new projects, which maybe involved a little bit of expenditure, was difficult for most people. But yeah, we're making progress, and I'm optimistic about how things will pan out.
Jonathan, do you think that the leadership model within those businesses has to change to allow them to really match those standards and to change the environmental outlook?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a question of values, isn't it, really? And a question of, publicly adopting and expressing your values. So, we're focusing very much on the environment. Of course, sustainability covers all sorts of different issues. As we all know, the UN has, I think, something like 17 sustainable goals, which they are encouraging people to work towards. It's a very broad range of issues, and I felt there's no way we can even begin to tackle all of these, but let's focus on one area, which is the environment, which perhaps is an area I know best. And I think, yeah, it is a question of people then thinking, and we need to do something about this. It's very obvious that we need to do something about the way we're interacting with the environment. And we need to do it seriously. We're not in the business of greenwashing. We're not in the business of saying, oh yeah, look at me, I'm green. No, schools have to demonstrate a serious commitment to environmental sustainability across a whole range of their business practices. And safe. Once they achieve that, then they're eligible for accreditation. But people will then have to also, nail their colours to the mast and say, look, we are a seriously green or environmentally friendly operation, and you can hold us to account if you find something that we're doing which doesn't meet the standards that we have established, and that schools are obliged to publish, in fact, on their websites and in social media and so on.
Great. No, that's really interesting. So it's interesting you touched on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals we were talking about the other day. So my daughter came home with that as homework. We had to put in a diamond format, all 17 of them in order of importance, and talk about it. And it is incredible, isn't it? Like you say, you picked one, fantastic, but you personally put them all in. And I'd encourage anyone to go and have a look at them and see where you are, see how far down a sort of city organizational structure comes in your list when you're faced with clean water for everyone, no child poverty, the climate change, these massive issues that everyone needs to be thinking about.
Yeah, I think of the 17, probably 4 or 5 of them actually are environmental in nature. But that's enough to be focusing on, at least from my perspective. I don't even imagine trying to tackle on any more than that.
Absolutely. So Celine, could you talk about a little bit how you have implemented, a difference in the model of leadership in our business?
Yes, I mean, obviously, I sort of brought, I found Penny, brought Penny to the table. Actually, I did Penny's course in May 2020, and I think actually finding that program was the result of a question when Penny was talking about questions, because somebody asked me really early on when everything was collapsing, who do you want to be in this crisis? And it was such a brilliant question. And I think at that moment, what I was being was, somebody who was drinking rather a lot of red wine and not really sure how she was going to handle the whole. I went searching. I stopped and I thought, who do I want to be? And I had a whole team behind me, people sort of looking for direction. Found the program, and it answered so many questions for me, and it had such a profound effect that I remember thinking, even if I don't know if I've got a job for everybody this time next year, I want them all to do this program, because I think it's a huge thing they can then carry on to wherever they go. And we did it all. We did it all together, and it's had a profound impact. What I would say is that it's a constant process. So I've gone through lots of different ways of thinking about leadership. We've had great discussions, I think, in the business about it. But really, you never stop learning. You never stop trying. And what the Living Leader did for us was it gave us a toolkit, and it gave us language around the sort of leaders that we wanted to be. Very much around the things that Penny was talking about, around communication, around our behaviours, but also sort of around our beliefs and how we'd got to where we were, and asking good questions. And those are the things that I think we strive. We don't always manage it, do we, Jago? I mean, and I can see people from the company listening into the call as well. Yeah. Moments where we think, all right, that didn't quite go so well. But what it gave us was a framework to say, okay, right, maybe that didn't work, or we have a bit of a catchphrase, which is, kind of give you a bit of Living Leader feedback. And now it's expected, as opposed to somebody saying, I'll give you some feedback, and everyone immediately thinks, oh God, what are they going to say? So I definitely feel as if it's helped us to walk the walk. And I think that when you were speaking before, I think one of the things is that we all look at sustainability, we look at leadership, and there's so many buzzwords around the place, and people like to tick boxes, and they like to say, this is what we do, this is what we think. But just like Penny said, when she went in and did those trainings and went back 6 weeks or 2 months later, and nothing had changed, I think what's really important, and what I feel like I'm seeing now with us, is that we're actually trying to walk the walk. We're trying to do the things that we've learned and trying to implement them, recognize when we're failing, and then continuing all the time. And that for me is what sustainable leadership is, because then the younger, more junior people in the company can see maybe more senior people trying and failing, and being able to say, yeah, no, I didn't handle that correctly, didn't communicate that correctly, that wasn't the right way to go, can I try again? And that for me is what sustainable leadership is.
Do you think it will change how we develop in the future, what products we do, or who we employ, things like that?
Yes, definitely, because it's become such a huge part of my life. I think, like you, Jago, made a big change. Obviously, you've all heard Penny speak. I've been fortunate to spend quite a lot of time with her, to listen to her. So there's been a big impact, and a lot about how I parent as well. She talks a lot about that, about her kids, and I think that is one element where, if you have kids, you are leading constantly. And I feel quite passionate about these skills and these ideas for the young. Because when we're looking at the future workplace, my eldest daughter's 17 now, and I think about her going out into the world of work in a few years' time, you think, what sort of environment do I want her to be in? Just like you said, Leanne, we want to be a good example for our kids. We don't want them to think we've got to kill ourselves and burn out. So we want to be modeling that. So I do wonder whether, we might look differently at products around leadership and who we employ. I think because we've changed so much within the company, how we deal with people and how we think about things, we would always want, other members of the team who represent that and who are going to embrace it wholeheartedly, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So we've touched on environment and the general thing. So Leanne, I'll come back to you. How do you think a change in the sort of leadership paradigm will affect makeups of leadership teams and therefore women's place in them in the future?
Yeah, I raised my hand there because I wanted to comment on something Celine had said, and it actually feeds in quite nicely to what you've just asked me, Jacob, is that I think leaders are allowed to be more authentic now, and we're allowed to try things and get them wrong, and we don't have to come to the table knowing everything and being perfect. And I think it's what Penny said about creating. Our job is to create leaders, and it's about daring to fail, daring to create so many strong leaders around us that we're almost not needed anymore, and showing people that you're not doing anything wrong, trying something and getting it wrong and reworking it and trying again. And I think if you try and have all the answers as a leader, it doesn't inspire. It doesn't inspire because you're just preaching, really, and it doesn't create the leaders that are going to make our companies successful for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's a very short-term way of thinking. And I think that sort of that authenticity, Celine, it'll make the people in your company feel that they can do the same as well, that they haven't got to sort of go away and practice and come back perfect. That it's something that, everyone's learning on the job, and that's fine. That's part of what we do. We're all growing together.
So if we're more authentic, that's a way to stop where I started with the book about why men win at work, where confidence is expected from leaders. And so if you're more authentic, you're able to be a different type of person, therefore a different type of leader. Therefore, we should be more equal. We should embrace that.
I was just going to say, that made me think, one of the first things that you do in the Living Leader program, we talked about Penny's programs about the mask and how we all have a mask that we carry very often at work. And I think that was a big shift. And I know sometimes in bigger companies or in very corporate settings, people can work alongside each other for a really long time and not know what the other person is dealing with. So one of the things that really has struck me through this whole process is the authenticity, but it's just a human to human contact. We've all had a really hard time, especially, our industry has been so badly affected. So we as business owners have had a really difficult time. The people who work for us have gone through stages of thinking, am I still going to have a job? I really like this industry. So actually being able to be open about that and show that, and these are what people consider to be slightly more feminine qualities, but actually showing that that's allowed and that's okay. And it's also okay for the men in the room to talk about their kids who've been ill, or, their wife's issues with work, or, just so that that the other people that you're working alongside every day are dealing with a whole load of things that you don't know about. And once we got past that mask bit, everybody got to know each other an awful lot better. And the fact we face such adversity, though, has created such a team aspect. And I think that's really important as a leader, to engender that and allow people to let go of that mask and be themselves a bit more in the work environment.
There's been a few tears, isn't there, our meetings? Like nice ones.
There have.
That sounds, we've been sharing and talking about challenges and getting really deep, and so it's been great, hasn't it? It's been really quite emotional, and really it's been building a it's incredibly strong, especially as I really have not really met anyone for 2 years. I've been,
been stuck in Glasgow.
So to feel so much part of the team through that, it was really great.
But also, sorry, Jacob, also what I think is the sustainability into the future, the generation, the younger people in the team, and everybody talks about millennials or snowflakes, whatever, they want that. They want that feeling that they're making an impact. They want that feeling that they're making a difference and that they are part of something. And I feel that that is how the model maybe needs to shift away from where it used to be, because that's the generation who we are employing, and they will settle for a bit less money to be in a place where they feel valued, they've got a voice, they're listened to, and they feel safe and happy coming to work. And that may be different to when we were first. I mean, when I say we, I'm generalizing, but maybe 20, 30 years ago, coming out into the workplace, I think that was very different.
Absolutely. So that's perfectly led me on to my next question then, which I was going to go back to Jonathan first, is if it will change be driven by what, so we'll go with what Celine said as well, the younger employees, but our customers, will customers ultimately drive changes in our leadership which drive the businesses and the things we do to be different? Do you see that when you're speaking to people about the environment? Are young people's environmental needs of the future driving change because of they're the customers?
Yeah, I think that's very clearly the case. And although I don't have any massive surveys that could prove the point, I think it's pretty obvious that everyone, but it's perhaps especially the younger generations, are really concerned about environmental issues. They want something to happen. They want something to happen now, not next month or next year. They want change to start now. And I think younger people are going to start looking more and more at the sort of values that companies manifest. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that a student perhaps based in Spain is going to choose an English language school in the UK simply because they have environmental accreditation. But I do sincerely believe that it could become a factor in the decision-making process. In other words, if the student has got a short list of half a dozen schools that offer similar courses at similar prices and so on, one or two of them have published their environmental values and are living up to them, then it may actually influence the decision of the student in terms of where they're going to go. At least, I very much hope that's the case, because of course that will be a driving force to push schools forward in this area. If one of my tasks, I suppose, is to persuade schools that serious commitment to environmental sustainability is not only good for the environment, it could also be good for the school. And I think if people realize that, then it should be pushing on an open door.
Do you want to come in, Leanne?
Yeah, I would just like to comment on something Jonathan was just saying about maybe students might not choose a particular school because they've got greener credentials than another. It might be more subtle
a factor in the decision-making process.
Yeah,
is what I said. Yeah.
But I think employees might well choose when they're doing their research, because I think one of our remits with Lead 50/50 is to support businesses to retain and attract the best talent. And I do think that if somebody's looking and deciding which company to apply for or which job to take, if they can see an organisation actively supporting gender equality and a fairer leadership paradigm, that they might choose either to stay in that business and see the career there long term, or they would choose to move somewhere else. And perhaps a student might not see that, but you would attract a better caliber of person working for you if you sort of nailed your colours to the mast and were part of a green standard school.
Yeah,
for example,
I think you're absolutely right. It could certainly help schools recruit, retain, and motivate key members of staff, because people want to know that their employer has values that go beyond the very basics.
what are the challenges that we all face in a leadership in a school then of changing the leadership paradigm? Celine, I'll come to you first. What are the big, because you've done it, what are the big things to look out for if you're trying to change?
I think it's the old, that's how we've always done it. In times of fear and uncertainty, we like to go back to what we know. It's hard to have change, especially cultural change in those times. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things, especially if this has worked before, or if people think, this is how I did it. This is how I started, and I had my time, and I had to work really hard. Nobody gave me anything, and all of those sort of things, which we can all be guilty of, because I know I have been as well. Actually coming up against that sort of thinking can make it really difficult. And I know that there's been times when people have said that, maybe I was a bit too soft or whatever, because it can stand a bit against the old management style. And there's value in that. We're not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's completely, let anyone do whatever they want and be all very hippy dippy. It's not really about that. And I think sometimes that's a challenge, because I think people can think it's that. When Penny gives a definition of leadership and management, people can think, well, no, management's actually right. That's how I've been doing it forever. That's the right way. I do know more. I've got more experience. So that can be hard to shift. But I think the more you do it, the more you see the results. The more you give that little bit of space where you ask people, what would they do? What do they think about doing? And maybe a few leading questions. And then that sense that they get of actually making their own decisions and taking a responsibility, the productivity that comes out of that and development for people that comes out of that will then change some of the more maybe cynical minds, I think, about it.
Leanne, have you got any thoughts about challenges because you're working with lots of different companies and hearing about their challenges, working with lots of people on your leadership courses? Any thoughts on that? Oh, sorry, I'm going to share the screen of the Sustainable Development Goals while you're
okay.
Sorry, just so you know.
No problem, go for it. Yeah, I think one of the challenges is just getting caught up in the day-to-day. So you've got, you've got good intentions and you've got good ideas and you do what you can to bring people on board with it. And then something like COVID hits and you're also busy firefighting, that it's difficult to have the time to implement the bigger ideas, especially if they're a bit more esoteric. But with effort and by shifting mindsets and just like Celine said, making it part of your language and using frameworks like Penny's or like the Lead 50/50 models, then I think it can be done. And anything that's worth, that has great rewards is challenging, and I think it's worth just meeting the challenge head on and getting on with it, really.
Yeah, if I could just make a couple of additions to that. I mean, I agree with what Leanne said in the sense that, finding the time to stop and think can be a challenge, especially when there's a million things that need sorting out. But I do think it's important, not just, for the senior management, but for, all the people on the team. And I remember there's a very nice quote from a book called The 1 Minute Manager, which always stuck in my head. And it is, don't just do something, sit there, which of course is the opposite of like the standard paradigm, So give yourself some time to think. And the other point, I think it also, as has been touched on previously, it's also confidence is absolutely key. You've got to be confident that, you can be allowed to fail, without the sky falling down. And sometimes you will fail, and maybe most of the time you'll fail with your new and ambitious ideas, but sometimes you won't, and then it's a question of making the best of the circumstances.
That's great. So we've got a few minutes left. Has anyone got any comments or anything they'd like to add or ask?
I just think if you might sometimes it's really difficult to move yourself and your entire businesses to a sort of lofty vision and a high ideal. But even if you set your standards there and you move a little bit towards it, you're moving in the right direction. And I think that's so important. We don't have to be perfect, and we don't have to be 10 out of 10 all the time. But if we're moving there and we're doing the right things, whether it's for the environment or for leadership or for gender equality, or whatever our causes are and the ways we're trying to improve our business, it's better than doing nothing and think, well, I haven't got time, or it's too difficult, or let's just keep with the status quo. And I think that's really important to remember.
Any comments from the audience at all? Oh yeah, Paul?
Just very quickly, it's been a fascinating conversation. Sustainable leadership, I didn't know exactly what to expect, because we're dealing with the environment, we're dealing with longevity, as we're dealing with succession is another way of looking at it. I live in Toronto, a place where 50% of the people weren't born in Canada, like myself. 50% of the people are from non-European backgrounds, unlike myself. But, the other thing about sustainable leadership in an environment like that, and, the UK is exactly the same as Canada and Australia, where we operate as well, is diversity of leadership. So yes, lead 50-50, but, in our business, in our culture, diversity includes people of color, it includes sexual orientation. And at ILSC, we have a broad global leadership team of 20 people around the globe representing different functions in the business, whether it's academics, sales and marketing, school operations, finance operations. And on our leadership team, we have a very diverse group of people representing people that essentially that's the world we live in. Those are the students that come to our schools. And so our school leadership needs to reflect our clients. So that was just another comment to add to the ones that have been shared already.
Yeah, very true.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that's a good point. And neurodiversity is key in leadership teams as well. So
yes. Yeah.
Probably got time for one last comment from anyone if they want to add something.
Alex is making some good comments in the comments if you want to read them out, because I'm not sure if they show up on the recording. People watching back.
Oh yeah, so Alex, I think we have responsibility as educators to embed all of these topics, particularly the UN SD goals across our courses, and inspire our students as well as our teams to be sustainable leaders. So it's a great point. Are we doing enough? Because we're teaching lots of people, lots of young people. Are we including these issues in our courses and the things that we're teaching? And because that's obviously another way to get that message across.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And it's one of the things that we expect members of Green Standard schools to do, to integrate environmental issues more frequently, more systematically into their classes, because we have this wonderful opportunity to talk to people about what's going on in the world and perhaps begin to influence at least the way they think. And when they go home, they may decide to adjust their behaviors in some respect. But, the impact globally of the language teaching industry talking to all these students could be quite significant.
Fair enough. No, absolutely. That's great. So maybe we need a standard for other things in the schools like gender and stuff. Leanne, Ella, we could have a conversation about that. So I think actually 5:30. So I think, I think we'll wrap up. Thanks very much. That was a great discussion. Thanks for all joining and putting your cameras on and showing your faces. Just Alex has just said that there's a lot of background noise, so that's why he's not talking. But so that's fine. You can talk more next time, Alex. Find a quiet spot. Really appreciate everyone coming on. So one quick thing.
Thanks, everyone.
The next Men for Equality series is on December the 8th. It's a holiday season special about the emotional load, and it's called Why Men Should Stop Helping Around the House.
Yes, really good one. Great.
a little bit tongue in cheek there, but please encourage more people to come. that should be a great discussion. Thanks for all participating, and I'll see you later.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.